Let's take a look at the rest of the NFL schedule heading into week number 4. All right, week 4 is here, and it gets an early start on Sunday as the Minnesota Vikings and Pittsburgh Steelers head off to Dublin for their game, the first of 2 that the Vikings are going to play overseas in back-to-back weeks. Minnesota 2.5-point favorites in this game. The total is at 41. The offensive stats don't look awesome for Minnesota. They are 28th in EPA per play, 30th in EPA per drop back, but the defense is at a very high level. Now, I will say, while I am trusting these stats, some of these can be skewed, and I would suggest the absolute ass beatery that they put on the Cincinnati Bengals in week number 3, probably skewing some of the defensive numbers. But it also backs up what we've talked about. This is a very good defense on the Minnesota side. First in defensive EPA per play. They are first in defensive EPA per dropback and 5th in defensive success rate. For the Steelers, the offense has just been kind of mid so far. That the game last week against the New England Patriots for the Steelers was very uninspiring, and that has kind of been the offense as a whole so far. Against the Jets, who we are seeing they're a bit vulnerable, they had a lot of things break their way so they could pick up a victory in that game. Then they got whooped on by Seattle, and then a New England team that has not looked impressive at all this year held it very close and basically fumbled that game away again for the Steelers. The Vikings, while we have concerns about Carson Wentz, this is not a team that's going to hand the game over to the Steelers. So I think when you see this Minnesota team defensively against the Steelers, I think this is going to be a very successful day for Minnesota's defense in shutting down this Pittsburgh team. When Minnesota has the ball, again, I don't think we're going to be seeing 48 points every week from this Vikings team with Carson Wentz at quarterback. But again, they showed that they can at least keep it between the lines with Mason there at running back, with Carson Wentz kind of just make sure you get the ball to Justin Jefferson and try to make everything all right. So the stats offensively aren't great for Minnesota, but defensively, it's quite surprising. You don't generally see this from Pittsburgh. They are 23rd in defensive EPA per play, 24th in defensive success rate, and 25th in defensive EPA per drop back. And again, they haven't exactly faced the cream of the crop when it comes to quarterbacks. I went on a rampage saying that Justin Fields is actually not a bad quarterback, but I mean, him and Sam Darnold and Drake May, that's not a murderer's row of quarterbacks by any stretch of the imagination. So this Steelers defense, while it's a kind of a calling card of what this team has been known for the past forever, it hasn't been very good this year, and the offense isn't good enough to make up for it. So I think the Vikings go 2-0 with Carson Wentz as their quarterback. I think they pick up a win here. I like Minnesota minus 2.5 in this spot with a bit of a thought toward the under as well. From a fantasy standpoint, Carson Wentz, it would still be a bold call to be trusting him this week, but I'm liking Mason, and Jefferson gets enough from Carson Wentz that you have to roll with him this week. Hawkinson, I could see there still being some concerns around that player. For the Steelers, Aaron Rodgers is a no. I mean, Jalen Warren, we're probably starting. I can't imagine, again, having 3 guys that you like better than Jalen Warren. DK Metcalf, again, is probably in that boat as well, but that's about it. I do not view this as a very good matchup for the Pittsburgh Steelers as they get ready for a game out in Dublin this week. Next, we have the LA Chargers taking on the New York Giants. The Chargers favored by 6.5 points with a total at 44.5. I said before when we were doing power rankings that I hate how the Giants have handled this situation. To me, this is the exact wrong way. Every decision that they have made leading to this point feels like the exact wrong one. Like the way this has played out, all of it kind of worst case scenario, barring an injury. If you were going to start Jackson Dart at this point, then you should have started him right from the word go. He should have been getting all the reps in training camp, getting comfortable with everyone, getting familiar in the offense, getting familiar with his teammates, and getting familiar with life as a starting quarterback in the NFL. And then you give him a couple of weeks to work his way through it. Yeah, there's going to be some bumps and bruises, but you give the kid some time and hope that he kind of works his way through it. The argument for doing it the way that the Giants did was Russell Wilson is at least a professional quarterback. He's going to be able to make this offense look okay, even with an offensive line that isn't great. So you allow Dart to get eased in and not have to play behind that offensive line. And if that is the door that they chose, by making it a competition in training camp, to me, Jackson Dart is out of the question for a year as the quarterback of this team. I don't know what he could be showing with the twos in practice that is making me think that I have to put this guy in. And that's not saying Russ is infallible, because we have functioning eyeballs. We have seen what this guy is doing on the football field on the offensive side. And even if you don't have functioning eyeballs, you have functioning ears and you have listened to the calls of these games. It's been awful what has been happening with the Giants. So this isn't a let Russ cook argument or anything like that. But the argument for this is, again, Russell Wilson, professional quarterback. You don't really care about like long term. That's very harsh. But him playing behind an bad offensive line isn't going to stunt his growth as a quarterback. He done grown, right? So you're not affecting him in any of these ways. And if it's going to be ineffective, then either whatever, or we're throwing Jameis Winston in here. But to put Jackson Dart behind this offensive line against this Chargers team, 6th in defensive EPA per dropback this year. Fourth in defense. Third. There we go. Third in defensive EPA per dropback this season. This is a very good Chargers defense that you are throwing this kid in there with a bad offensive line. If you were going to do this, he needed to start the season as the starter and let him get accustomed to everything. But the second you don't, you are accepting that we don't have the offensive line to help this kid out, so we're going to go with our veterans to roll with this. If Russ isn't doing it, then it has to be Jameis Winston that you're going to a quarterback instead. This is the problem with having coaches and GMs that are coaching and GMing for their jobs. First of all, GM should just be fired, right? Like, this is to be in this situation and to have to basically protect your rookie quarterback from the roster that you have constructed. It means you're fired. Like, that's just that. It's plain and simple to me. But you have a coach who is obviously coaching for his job right now in Brian Daboll, and he's not he is trying to win that battle. So you bring in Russ, not because you think it gives you the best chance to win, or for long-term success, but because, well, we can show offensive improvement with this guy. And when it doesn't work, now your only lifeline for keeping your job is, well, if we show that Jackson Dart has progressed, then you're not going to want to change the offensive system around him. So this is obviously a coach that is coaching for his job. And I think it is coming at the significant detriment of the development of what should be an important piece for this New York Giants team. So just in typical New York Giants fashion, everything about this has been handled improperly. And any time that they've come to the little note at the end of it, choose your own adventure, they've picked the wrong page to flip to. And I think it is going to be very, very bad news for them. So that being said, I think the Chargers do well in this game. I think this is a very well-coached defense. And given the intelligence on that side of the ball for this Chargers team, I think you're going to see a lot of things that confuse and frustrate a young quarterback. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on him as well, like figuratively and literally. So I think this Chargers defense just eats this kid alive. Offensively, the Chargers are awesome. The Giants have done all right on defense, but this game is all about what this defense can do. And so I like the Chargers winning big in this spot. Chargers cover 6.5, and the over under at 44. I would probably lean under on that one as well. From a fantasy standpoint, I think I made it pretty obvious. We're not starting Jackson Dart this week. If we want to roll with Scattaboo getting the start over Tracy, that's fine. I don't think you're going to have a great day. Like, this is a decent Chargers defense, but you can run on them a little bit, maybe. So I guess probably not, or maybe not, I guess. Scattaboo, It's a case-by-case basis. If you have any Scatterboo questions, throw them in the chat or in the comments. I'm not overly confident either way. Neighbors, you have to start. No one else in the passing game I would touch. Wan'Dale Robinson, the big thing was that there was some value for him from Russell Wilson. I would ignore that right now. On the Chargers side, Herbert has turned into a must-start. Hampton, I view this defense as actually being a pretty good defense, but you look at the numbers and they're not. Now, part of that is a wild shootout game that they had with the Dallas Cowboys, but they're 29th in defensive EPA per play, 30th EPA per rush for the defense. So Hampton may have a pretty good game here. And then Quentin Johnston has turned into a must-start. You're starting your Chargers. Keenan, Lad McConkey, and I think we are also going with Quentin Johnston as well. So that is the breakdown of where I think a big breakdown is coming. Wrong button. Where I think a big breakdown is coming for the New York Giants. Next, we have the Carolina Panthers taking on the New England Patriots. Pats favored by 5.5 points with the total sitting at 43. Carolina coming off of their biggest win in a couple of years, a shutout victory over the Atlanta Falcons. I would not read too much into that performance. They didn't do a whole lot through the air in that game. They didn't have a big blowaway game on the ground. Defensively, they got maybe a couple of takeaways, but this was just a bad performance by Atlanta. So Carolina, it's not a great football team. I wouldn't read too much into it. On the New England side, also not a great football team. That was a very sloppy game against the Pittsburgh Steelers last week. They probably should have won that game, but the offense kept fumbling away high-level opportunities. I think this game kind of gets stuck in the mud a little bit. I don't anticipate this being a very high-scoring game, so I'm going to take the under at 43. 5.5 just feels a little bit too high for an offense that hasn't really shown that they can do that at any point this season, and I'm not going to trust Carolina to keep this close either. So I'm just going to avoid having to pick a side in this one and just go with the under here at 43. From a fantasy standpoint, it's probably not a lot here. Young, obviously not. Chuba Hubbard, probably. Like, that's one that I think we can kind of roll with right now. It is a good run defense in New England. They are 5th in defensive rush EPA. So, again, it is a tricky defense to go up against because they haven't looked as dominant as people have thought, but they still have looked good. So, Chuba Hubbard, we're probably starting him this week. I would try to find someone else aside from Teterola McMillan to play this week. I'm avoiding my Panthers here. For the Patriots, Drake May, probably not. Ramondre Stevenson, I would go no at this point. It feels like there was a actual benching after the second fumble. So I would want to see, unless it is so glowingly obvious that they are going with Stevenson and they're like kind of building, like pumping his tires a little bit, I would tend to avoid that one from a fantasy standpoint. And then there's no pass catchers in New England that I like. So not much to look at from a gambling perspective or a fantasy perspective in this game. We've honestly probably talked about it a little bit too long already. Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Eagles favored by 3.5 with the total sitting at 44. The Eagles coming off of a surprising come-from-behind win over the LA Rams last week, while the Tampa Bay Buccaneers felt like they were fully in control of their game with the New York Jets until a couple field goal blocks all of a sudden changed some stuff on the Tampa Bay sideline. But Baker Mayfield once again came up huge when it mattered the most. So very fascinated by what this game looks like. And to me, the big matchup here is a Philadelphia team that loves to run the football against a Tampa Bay team that is really good at stopping teams from doing that. You have the Eagles, who are the number one team in the league in EPA per rush, and you are going up against the number one defense in defensive EPA per rush. So a fascinating matchup here. The thing that gives you the most hope, I guess, from a Philadelphia standpoint is something we've talked about here. A lot of people with fantasy questions about A.J. Brown and what to do with him in this offense. I think we kind of got some of those answers this week. You at least saw what you wanted to this week. And it's one of the things we were talking about. When Jalen Hurts has to throw, it's still going to be okay. They're going to actually throw the football. And we saw that in the comeback. They were actually airing it out. They were actually pushing the ball down the field. This was not a good Barkley day. They were able to still come up with the big throws at the big times that they needed to come away with a big victory on Sunday afternoon. So I think you have to feel pretty good about where you're at there for Philadelphia. But again, I think you're going to be relying a lot on Jalen Hurts here. On the defensive side, like this is still a very good Eagles defense. A lot of the stats don't really show it through 3 weeks, but there's still a lot of talent on the defensive side of the football. But it's a good offense for Tampa Bay, specifically when they're throwing the ball. They are 5th right now in EPA per drop back. 24th in EPA per rush, though. So I do worry about them being a touch predictable. But I think Tampa Bay, with their strength against the run, that could be enough to at least keep this game close. So if we're doing just like survivor pick 'em, I mean, if we're doing a survivor thing, stay away from this. But if we're doing just like a pick 'em league or something, I would probably go Philadelphia. But I'm going to take Tampa Bay to cover here. I think the Buccaneers' run defense is enough to keep them close in this spot. So I like the Bucs plus 3.5. Looking at it from a fantasy standpoint, Jalen Hurts, he's going to get his in the run game. I know we just talked about Tampa Bay being good against the run, but Hurts himself is a weapon in that area. And I mean, this is one of the toughest teams in the league to do the tush push against, but you still have to feel good about that. Saquon Barkley, it would be the ballsiest move of all time to just not start that guy. So we're starting him. We're rolling with our studs of Smith and A.J. Brown. Tough matchup aside, you got to put your Eagles out there. For Tampa Bay, there's no Mike Evans this week. Baker Mayfield, it's been fun so far, but we probably have better options out there than Baker Mayfield at quarterback this week. So that's something we're probably going to look to avoid at this particular time. Looking at the rest of the Bucs from the running game, Bucky Irving, Rashad White is an afterthought now. Bucky Irving is the guy. We're rolling with him every week. Ibuka, same thing. Like, it's at this point, you have to put the kid in the lineup with what he has shown as a reliable receiving option so far. And mention him in the waiver wire short that we did. Cade Otton, I know we got 0 targets last week, but they're going to have to get those targets out to someone that we're going to Mike Evans. So I think Otton could be more involved in the passing game this week. And for deeper leagues, Sterling Shepard, I think, is a play. But I think this is really, because of the matchup, one of the more interesting games that we're going to see on Sunday. Next up, Washington taking on the Atlanta Falcons. The Commanders favored by 1.5 as of this recording, and the over-under is at 45.5. Now, I will say, again, for those watching this after the fact, we are recording this, or listening to it, I guess. We are recording this on Wednesday afternoon. So all we have seen so far is that Jaden Daniels has participated in a practice. So we will see what happens with him throughout the week. Obviously, a lot depends on how that plays out. But I mean, Marcus Mariota at least got the ball to the guys that he needed to on offense. Now, there were a couple of guys who missed practice this week again for Washington. Old Bill Krosky there, he was not in the lineup. And Terry McLaurin also missed practice on Wednesday. It is Wednesday, though, so some players tend to skip those anyway. I wouldn't be too worried about that just yet, but definitely check your roster reports as the week goes on. So it's a bit tricky to figure out what Washington can do on the offensive side, and this Atlanta defense has actually been okay. Defensively, they are 5th in EPA per play and 8th in EPA per dropback. So it's not on the defense what's happened in Atlanta so far, but this offense, while it looked pretty good, and we could say legitimate starter for Atlanta against Tampa Bay, maybe a certain Red Zone host was saying that, and just absolutely thrilled with what he saw from Michael Penix in week 1. 27th in EPA per dropback so far this season. So not great for this Atlanta passing attack. Washington, I think, is just a better football team. Even with Marcus Mariota, I like Washington to cover 1.5 points. From a fantasy standpoint, take a look at the injury report. If anyone's hurt, obviously don't play them. But if Daniels is in, then we're going with him. Krosky Merritt is in, we're playing him. If McLaurin's in, we're playing him. Like, we're rolling with the studs here for Washington. On the Atlanta side, obviously Penix is a no. Bijan, you have to at this point. Drake London, I still have hope that that's going to turn around here after saying that he shouldn't be traded for Alvin Kamara this week. But it's getting a little bit, but I still think you have to start the big guns with Bijan, Pitts, and Drake London. But things have to start turning around very, very quickly out in Atlanta. Next up, Cleveland against the Detroit Lions. Lions favored by 9.5 in this game with the total at 44. Cleveland has shown that this defense is significantly better than people thought it was going to be. That is the main takeaway from this. And look, me included, like Myles Garrett and that defense was just dynamite a couple of years ago. Took a step back last year. And I was not confident that they could find that step again this season, but they have. And they have done it against legitimately some pretty good offenses. Baltimore, I know, torched them late, but they were able to keep that close for a while. They held very tight with Cincinnati, and then they get the win over a Packers offense that's been dominating everyone so far. So I do think that this defense does enough to keep this game close with Detroit. And this is probably going to be the last week that I look to excuses on the Detroit side of things, but all I will say about the big performances that we have seen from this team against a Chicago defense that we don't really trust and against a Ravens defense that has given up some major points this season, also missing several key players on the defensive side. So I think this is honestly probably the best defense that this team's faced so far this year in the Cleveland Browns. I don't think they're able to run away with this game the same way that everyone else has been projecting them to do. So Detroit minus 9.5. I'm not digging it. I like this offense isn't going to score a lot on the Cleveland side, but the defense is going to be able to keep it close. So I think that Cleveland holds this one tight, and we will take the Browns plus 9.5. From a fantasy standpoint, Judkins is the only option I would even consider on the Cleveland side of things. And for Detroit, I know we just talked about the defense. It would be quite the thing to not go with Jared Goff right now. So you probably have to start him just based on how well it's gone the last couple of weeks. Gibbs and Montgomery were rolling with, like, you're starting your Lions, even in a tough matchup, I think, against the Cleveland Browns. So we'll see, can this Browns defense really show that they are for real again? Next up, AFC South matchup, Tennessee taking on the Houston Texans. This is the Texans season right here. If this goes bad for the Texans, the season is done. And honestly, it felt like it last week. A loss against Jacksonville. The offensive line is just putrid right now, and it is holding every area of this team back. This is a good defensive football team that is made to look average because of the awfulness of the offensive line. So that's what it comes down to. Can Simmons and the rest of the defensive front for Tennessee get in Stroud's face enough to offset things here? The Titans, this defense has shown to have a few more holes in it than I think I expected them to this year. Simmons can be a game wrecker up the middle, but I don't know how they score any points against this Texans defense. So Houston minus 7 is way too hard, way too long to feel very comfortable to take. But I don't trust that this is a very well oddsed game because I am not trusting Houston to blow out a team right now. I'm not trusting the Titans to keep it close. And it's a very low total at 38.5, but I think we might have to go under it anyway. I know it's low, but we're going to go under 38.5 because I don't trust anyone in this game. And so from a fantasy standpoint, Stroud, no. The running, maybe Woody Marks at running back as a swing and a hope. Maybe. Nico Collins, you probably have to, but that's it from this whole football game. It's just not going to be a pretty one out there on Sunday in the AFC South. This one will be quick. Buffalo's taking on New Orleans. The Saints are very bad. The Bills are quite good. The Bills are favored by 16.5. And I think they covered that. We don't need to go in depth on this one. The Bills are awesome. The Saints suck. It's Bills minus 16.5. From a fantasy standpoint, Alvin Kamara, Josh Allen, and all the Bills. Good talk. Next one, Indy taking on the LA Rams. Rams favored by 3.5 in this game with the total sitting at 49.5. I am very intrigued by this game because Indy, everything is looking good right now offensively. Second in EPA per play, second in success rate, first in EPA per drop back, and fifth in EPA per rush. This offense is rolling. And they have done it against they have done it against at least a team in Denver that you feel good about. But this is a real defense and a real team with the Rams. Also, just a quick note, all the stats that I look at, they're sixth in all of them except for one. They are sixth in EPA per play, success rate, EPA per rush, defensive EPA per play, defensive success rate, and they throw it all off by being fifth in defensive EPA per dropback. This is a good, well-rounded football team, and I think that this is where they give the Colts a bit of a stumble. Tennessee wasn't going to do it last week, but this Rams team is just solid everywhere. The speed that they can play the game with is quite impressive. They were shutting down the Eagles until it got absolutely out of hand, but I think you have to view this as a very significant test for the Colts, and it's one that I think the Rams absolutely will pass. And then defensively, I still don't think I still don't think the Colts are that good, and I think that the Rams have a pretty good day offensively. So I like the Rams in this spot. I will take them gladly to cover at -3.5. From a fantasy standpoint, Brawley619 in the chat, yo, start one, Kyren Williams, Omarion Hampton, or Jordan Mason with the Minnesota Vikings. I would have to go probably with Kyren there. Hampton for the Chargers in a pretty good spot against the Giants, and Mason, we talked about it earlier, Mason in a really good spot against the Steelers defense that has struggled significantly this year. But to me, Kyren Williams is the guy. Like, he was kind of wrecking shop on that Eagles run defense in this game, or in that game on Sunday, and I think he can do a whole lot more against the Indianapolis Colts. I really view this as a statement game for the Rams. They're going to be pissed off from last week. This is an undefeated Colts team, and they're just going to want everyone to shut up about them. So I think that the Rams come in and just bully them around. So Kyren Brawley is absolutely the start play there. I love Kyren Williams in that spot. For the rest of the fantasy options, I think you could start Matthew Stafford this week. Puka Nacua is obviously a start. That is the apple of the eye of Matthew Stafford when they're looking to get into winning time. And Devontae Adams is a stud, even if we're getting away with just obvious stiff arms on routes now, because that was so blaringly pass interference on that play in the end zone when just out there right into the chest of a guy. But still, able to come away with the touchdown on that one. Broly, yeah, hey, thank you for chatting in. Love chatting with you here. Over the last couple of weeks since we've really started upping all of this. So yeah, thanks for popping in today. If you have more questions, throw them in there and we'll get to them as we go along here. On the Colts side, it would be insane to not start Jonathan Taylor. He is, like, that is one thing about this Colts resurgence, is Jonathan Taylor is reminding everyone that this is one of the most talented running backs in the National Football League. So we're going with him, we're going with Pittman, but I don't know if I'm trusting anyone else right now on the Indianapolis Colts. But still, a very big test for the Colts coming up on Sunday. Next up, Jacksonville taking on the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers favored by 3 with a total sitting at 47.5. Jacksonville, the offense, the defense, everything is looking okay this year, but I don't know how much we can trust that because they just haven't played anybody that you feel very threatened by, right? They played Carolina, congratulations. They were the ones that injured Joe Burrow and still lost to the Bengals. And then Houston is not a good team, but is a very good defensive team. And so you can explain away a bit of the issues they had on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm really interested to see what this offense looks like against a pretty good San Francisco defense. They are 9th in defensive EPA per play and 10th in defensive EPA per drop back. And right now, I am trusting San Francisco's defense over Jacksonville's offense in what they have shown me this year. So I think that's a big edge on the San Francisco side. The big statement for me on Jacksonville is the defense. What is this defense? Because again, Carolina and Houston are both teams that are having some significant problems on the offensive side. So I worry about what they're going to look like against this 49ers offense, but the 49ers offense hasn't been blown away, and we'll see. Brock Purdy is practicing again on Wednesday here as we're recording this, so keep an eye on the reports as we go along. But I think San Francisco does enough to win this game. I just think they're a better football team right now, so we'll go San Francisco to cover the 3. From a fantasy standpoint, there's not a lot in this game, guys. This is Jacksonville. We're not starting Trevor Lawrence. ETN maybe. Brian Thomas is still a must play, but it's working towards not being that anymore. Travis Hunter, we're probably sitting until we see something big from him at this point. On the San Francisco side, I don't know if I'm trusting either quarterback right now. Christian McCaffrey, obviously, we're rolling with him, and Ricky Pearsall, but not a whole lot fantasy-wise from this game right now. So, I think a good measuring stick game, anyway, for these two teams. Fantasy question from the chat. Broly619 asking, do I sit Jamar Chase and start Keenan Allen or Igbuka this week, or stick with Chase? I understand where this question is coming from, because Keenan, he's kind of balling out with this Chargers team. And again, we talked about it before, Broly, with the Hampton matchup. It's a pretty good matchup against the Giants here. And Igbuka, I talked about him before. He has worked his way into kind of being an obvious start every week, but I have to trust with Chase that it gets better. And so I would feel bad if we sat Jamar Chase and he had a big game on my bench, because it's Jamar Chase, right? Like I would rather go down with my stars than being half a beat too cute and putting in Igbuka or Allen, even though they have good matchups this week, putting them in over a Jamar Chase. So that's where I am at on that right now. I would have concerns about sitting him. Last week was as bad as it can get. It's a good Denver defense they're playing this week, so obviously concerns. Very right to be asking the question, Brawley, but I think for now we have to go with our stud, and the stud is Jamar Chase. Want to let everyone know that you can support Couch Potato Diary and my cat's insatiable treat habit with the link in the description on YouTube or in the podcast, or in a panel on Twitch and Kick. We got the tip jar that is out right now. So if you want to help Couch Potato Diary, it is not expected or required or anything like that. But if you have the means, would love the support, and my cats would love the treat. Although if you saw Bailey on the start of the waiver wire video, maybe we could bring the treats down for her a bit, but Babs needs them because one cat eats all of them. So either way, you could help us out with the tip jar. But again, just your eyes and ears are more than enough support for me. Up next, we have the game of the day. It is a massive one, with the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. Both teams at 1-2 in pretty desperate need of a win. Baltimore is the favorite at 2.5 points with a total of 48.5. For Kansas City, the numbers do not back up what we are seeing with our eyes. The Chiefs are a top 10 offense, according to EPA per play, and 9th in success rate, while the defense is 23rd in success rate and 29th in EPA per rush, which is not a great thing when you are facing the Baltimore Ravens, one of the most dangerous teams on offense this season. But Baltimore has been able to get got a couple of times defensively. They've given up big points now to the Detroit Lions, and they've given up big points to the Buffalo Bills. So every way you look at this game, there's okay, well, these guys are good at this, but these guys are good at this, and they're bad at this, but they're bad at this. It is point counterpoint, and it's fitting that these two teams kind of have the same record right now. I still anticipate both these teams are going to be there at the end. I still feel like these are two of the best teams in the National Football League, but one of them is going to be 1-3 to start the season, which is just beyond comprehension to me. So let's break this down. When Baltimore has the football, I do have concerns about Kansas City's run game. It has been an issue for a while, or run defense game. And the front is great, but they're very good at getting after the pass. And for whatever reason, the run game has just been a bit of an Achilles heel for them, which again, not great, Bob, when you're going up against Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and this rushing attack. Fumbles have started to become a bit of an issue for Derrick Henry, but still, the guy is an absolute stud. When Kansas City has the ball, again, the issue is just not a lot of weapons out there in the passing attack. But Baltimore got the ball slammed down their throat by Detroit all Monday night. We will see if the injuries are still there for guys like Van Noy and the rest of the problems that they had on the defensive side. But if they're still missing a guy or two on that defense, I think Kareem Hunt has an opportunity to have a big game here. I think this could be, hey, don't forget about me game for Isaiah Pacheco. And looking at it right now, Xavier Worthy is practicing for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think right now the injury issues that Baltimore is dealing with on the defensive side kind of tilt this in the favor of the defending AFC champions. I get it's been ugly and it is very, very frustrating. I don't like the not clutch argument for Baltimore. They do find a way to lose these games a lot. Kansas City finds a way to win these games a lot. So I'm going to go Chiefs. If nothing else, I get to take points and pick Mahomes and Andy Reid. I don't get to go Kansas City plus often in my days. So I will go plus Kansas City, plus 2.5. From a fantasy standpoint, who aren't you starting here, right? Like Lamar Jackson, obviously, we're going with him. Derrick Henry, we're obviously starting him as well. Zay Flowers, yes, probably. Mark Andrews has a couple of big games, or a couple of big plays in this game on Monday night. So I think he is someone that you are starting. On the Kansas City side, Mahomes, I can understand not wanting to play him in this particular matchup. But again, if there are issues on the defensive side for Baltimore, it would be tough to sit Patrick Mahomes in a big spotlight game on Sunday afternoon. Like I said before, I think Pacheco and Hunt have good opportunities in the run game for Kansas City this week. I think that they can come up with a pretty big moment here and some pretty big fantasy days. Worthy, if he's back, I would feel comfortable starting him. And you got to go with Travis Kelce in a big time spot as well. So a lot of frustration, a lot of disappointment around these teams, but it should be fun. Up next, less fun. I probably could have scripted this out better and just gone into the primetime games, but we got my team, the Vegas Raiders, taking on the Chicago Bears. Total is at 47.5 with Vegas favored by 1. I don't get that one. I understand that Caleb Williams hasn't looked amazing in the first couple of weeks of the season, but last week he balled out. And this Raiders secondary, screaming from the mountaintops, this is not a good Raiders secondary. This is a Raiders secondary that you can take advantage of. So for Chicago, I think there's a real opportunity for Caleb Williams to look very good in the passing attack, for this offense to be able to get going. The issue is this defense has been a problem so far this season. And the Raiders are showing they can stretch the field and they can incorporate some of these weapons. They haven't done great with Genty and Bowers, who's a little bit banged up right now, but Geno Smith looks legit behind an offensive line that isn't the worst in football. So I think this ends up actually being a pretty high scoring game. I do think Chicago just has more weapons and it is a little bit more refined in what they can do right now. And I think their defense is a little bit better than what the Raiders can do. So I like Chicago as an upset play here, +1, but I like them as an upset play. From a fantasy standpoint, we're starting everybody. I'm liking Caleb Williams this week against this Raiders secondary. The one thing, though, the Raiders are not awful at, it's defending the run. They are 3rd in defensive rush EPA. Swift is probably still a flex option for us, but none of the backups, obviously, at this point. And again, I think because of the nature of the Raiders secondary, I think there's an opportunity for Odunze, Burden, and DJ Moore to all kind of cook in this one. So I like all of the weapons for Chicago. On the Raiders side, we're still not sitting Ashton Genty. We're not going away from Brock Bowers. I know a lot of people went out and got Trey Tucker this week on the waiver wire. I think you could start him here. Like, I think this game's going to be a little bit wild. I think Geno Smith is not a bad play this week. And I like what else is kind of coming for the Raiders in this passing attack. So this is one where we're starting everybody, which is not something we've said about Raider games a whole lot over the last little while.